You're not just aging, you're accelerating it, and you might be doing it every single morning. Most people believe getting older is automatic, something you can't control. But that belief is exactly what's putting your body at risk, because right now, as you go through your daily routine, your cells are constantly receiving signals that either slow aging down or quietly speed it up. And the dangerous part is the fastest aging signals often feel completely normal, skipping movement, eating too frequently, living in a constant low-level state of stress. These don't feel like damage. But inside your body, they can keep you locked in a biological state where repair never fully turns on. That means inflammation builds, metabolism slows, and cellular damage starts to accumulate long before you ever notice it on the outside. So if you've ever wondered why your energy drops, your body changes, or your recovery takes longer than it used to, it may not be your age. It may be the signals you're sending, because aging isn't just time passing. It's a process being directed. And once you see what's actually controlling that process, you'll never look at your daily habits the same way again. What most people call aging is just the number of birthdays you've had, but that number is almost meaningless when it comes to how your body is actually functioning, because there are two completely different clocks running inside you right now. One is chronological age, the time that's passed. The other is biological age, the condition of your cells, your metabolism, your immune system, your ability to repair and recover. And those two numbers can be dramatically different. You can be 45 on paper, but biologically closer to 60, or in some cases, closer to 30. That gap isn't luck. It's not genetics alone. It's the result of signals, thousands of them being sent into your body every single day. Every meal, every hour of sleep, every spike of stress, every moment of movement or stillness, they all act like instructions telling your body how fast to age. Your cells are not passive. They are constantly listening, constantly adapting, constantly deciding whether to grow, to restore, or to repair. And here's the part. Most people never realize your body prioritizes based on those signals. If it senses abundance and stress, it stays in growth mode. If it senses scarcity and recovery, it shifts into repair mode. And that single decision, made millions of times across your cells, quietly determines your aging trajectory. So if aging is being directed by signals, then the real question isn't how old you are. It's what instructions you're giving your body right now. And if those instructions can change, then so can the speed at which you age. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. It's not the obvious mistakes that age you fastest. It's the habits you've been told are normal. Waking up and staying sedentary for hours. Eating from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep. Constantly checking your phone. Living in a low-grade state of stress that never truly shuts off. None of these feel dangerous. In fact, they feel routine. But inside your body, they create a constant stream of signals that keep you locked in the wrong biological state. When you eat too frequently, your system stays in growth mode. When you're stressed, your body prioritizes survival, not repair. When you don't move, your metabolism slows and efficiency drops. And when all of that happens together, something critical gets shut down. The very system designed to clean up damage and restore your cells. That means inflammation doesn't resolve. Cellular waste accumulates, and your body quietly drifts further away from optimal function, not overnight, not in a way you can immediately see, but gradually, steadily beneath the surface. So you start to feel it before you can explain it. Less energy, slower recovery, subtle changes that don't match your age. And the most dangerous part, you assume it's normal, you assume it's time, but the real problem isn't that you're doing something wrong, it's that you're unknowingly activating the wrong system. So what is this system that determines whether your body ages faster or starts repairing itself? It comes down to a powerful biological switch inside your cells called AMPK, short for AMP activated protein kinase. You don't need to remember the name, but you do need to understand what it does, because AMPK is one of the most important regulators of how your body uses energy, and more importantly, when it decides to repair itself. The simplest way to picture it is this. Imagine your body has two modes. One is growth mode, where you're storing energy, building tissue, and responding to abundance. The other is repair mode, where your body slows things down, fixes damage, clears out waste, and restores cellular function. AMPK is the switch that turns repair mode on, and here's how it works. When your cells sense low available energy, like when you haven't eaten for a while or when you're physically active, AMPK activates. It sends a signal that says, we don't have excess fuel right now. Stop storing, start conserving, start repairing. In response, your body increases fat burning, improves metabolic efficiency, reduces inflammation, and begins repairing damaged cellular components. Even your mitochondria, the energy engines inside your cells, become more efficient and resilient. This is how your body protects itself from aging at the cellular level. But when energy is constantly available, when you're eating all day, rarely moving, and living in a constant state of input, AMPK stays off. And when it stays off, repair never fully activates, damage accumulates instead of being cleared, efficiency drops instead of improving, and over time, that creates the exact conditions that accelerate aging from the inside out. Your body isn't broken in that situation. It's simply following instructions based on the signals it's receiving. But here's the critical issue. Most modern lifestyles rarely create the conditions needed to activate AMPK. And that means a system designed to slow aging stays silent. Now, here's where this becomes real, because AMPK isn't just some abstract pathway buried in a textbook. It's influenced by things you already do every day. Take your morning coffee. For millions of people, it's the first ritual of the day, almost automatic. And what most don't realize is that caffeine, the active compound in coffee, can directly stimulate AMPK. In the right context, that simple cup can nudge your body toward repair mode, but context is everything. Because the way most people drink coffee completely cancels that benefit. Adding sugar, flavored syrups, ultra-processed creamers, those additions spike glucose and insulin, pushing your body right back into growth mode. So instead of activating repair, you're reinforcing the exact state that prevents it. And timing matters just as much as what you put in the cup. Drinking coffee in a fasted state before your first meal can amplify its effect on AMPK, because your cells are already sensing low energy. That's when the signal becomes stronger, clearer, more effective. But if you're constantly eating, constantly snacking, constantly providing fuel, that signal gets drowned out. Your body never hears the message to switch into repair. So what feels like a small, harmless habit, how you drink your coffee, can either support your cellular resilience or quietly work against it. And once you see that, you begin to realize something deeper. This isn't about one perfect habit. It's about the cumulative signals you send from the moment you wake up, because coffee isn't the magic. It's just one example of how small daily choices shape your biology. And coffee is only one of many signals you're sending every single day. If you step back and look at the bigger picture, a clear pattern starts to emerge. The most powerful ways to activate AMPK are not exotic, complicated, or reserved for elite athletes. They are built into the way your body was designed to function. Fasting is one of the strongest signals. When you go without food for a period of time, your cells detect that drop in available energy and immediately begin shifting toward conservation and repair. Exercise does the same thing. Even a brisk 2-0 minute walk forces your body to use energy, triggering that same switch toward efficiency and cellular cleanup. Cold exposure, whether it's a cold shower or simply stepping outside in cooler temperatures, adds another layer, pushing your system to adapt and become more resilient. And then there are polyphenols compounds found in foods like green tea, berries, and certain vegetables that act almost like biochemical messengers, reinforcing those repair signals at the cellular level. None of these are extreme. None of them are out of reach, but together they create a powerful environment where your body is constantly reminded to repair, restore, and protect itself. And the most important part, you don't need to understand every detail for it to work. Asterisk, because your body already knows exactly how to respond to these signals, whether you're aware of them or not. Now, let's go one level deeper beyond energy and metabolism into the structure of your DNA itself. Because inside every one of your cells, there's a built-in protective system that directly influences how fast you age. It's called the telomere. Think of telomeres as the plastic tips at the ends of your shoelaces. Their job is simple but critical. They protect your DNA from fraying, from breaking down, from losing integrity as your cells divide over time. Every time a cell replicates, those telomeres get slightly shorter. That's normal. That's part of life. But what most people don't realize is that the speed at which they shorten is not fixed. It's influenced by the same signals we've been talking about: stress, inflammation, poor metabolic health, lack of recovery. When those factors are present, telomeres wear down faster, leaving your DNA more exposed to damage. And once that protection weakens, cells begin to lose function, repair becomes less efficient. And aging accelerates at a fundamental level. This isn't something you can feel immediately, but it's happening silently, constantly beneath the surface. Your biological clock isn't just ticking, it's being pushed forward or slowed down depending on how well your cells are protected. And that's why telomeres matter so much. They are not just markers of aging, they are active participants in it. They determine how resilient your cells remain as time passes. And when that protective layer begins to erode beyond a certain point, the system doesn't just slow down, it destabilizes. And when that protection wears thin, everything else begins to accelerate. So how do you actually protect those telomeres in a measurable, evidence-based way? One of the clearest answers comes from vitamin D, not as a vague wellness trend, but as a clinically studied signal that directly influences cellular aging. In a large analysis of over 1,600 healthy adults, Researchers measured blood levels of vitamin D and compared them to telomere length in white blood cells. The result was striking higher. Vitamin D levels were consistently associated with longer telomeres, and when the data was translated into real-world impact, every 50 nanomoles per liter increase in vitamin D corresponded to approximately a 13 kilobase increase in telomere length, an effect equivalent to slowing biological aging by about three years. That's not theoretical, that's measurable. Mechanistically, it makes sense. Vitamin D binds to receptors present in nearly every cell, including immune and stem cells, where it helps reduce oxidative stress and supports DNA repair pathways. In other words, it strengthens the very systems that preserve cellular integrity over time. And yet, despite this, a significant portion of adults in the United States have suboptimal vitamin D levels, largely due to limited sun exposure, indoor lifestyles, and seasonal variation, which means the protective signal is often weaker than it should be. And when that signal drops, the rate of cellular wear quietly increases. This is why something as simple as consistent sunlight exposure, targeted nutrition, or appropriate supplementation can have a disproportionate impact, because sometimes a small shift in one signal is enough to slow down the entire system. A few years ago, a 7-year-old patient came into my clinic. On paper, he was relatively healthy, no major diagnosis, no alarming lab results. But when you look closer, something didn't add up. He was constantly fatigued. His recovery after simple workouts was slow. His weight was creeping up despite eating clean, and his blood markers were drifting in the wrong direction. If you had to guess, you'd say he was aging faster than expected. And in many ways, he was, not because of his chronological age, but because of the signals his body had been receiving for years. He was eating from early morning until late at night, rarely allowing his system to enter a low energy state. His job kept him sedentary for long stretches, and stress was a constant background noise. His body wasn't broken, it was stuck in a mode that never prioritized repair. So instead of prescribing anything extreme, we focused on shifting signals. We introduced a simple fasting window, added daily movement, nothing intense, just consistent, and adjusted his morning routine, including how and when he drank his coffee. We also addressed his vitamin D levels. Over the next 8 to 12 weeks, the changes were subtle at first. Then they compounded. His energy stabilized, his recovery improved, his metabolic markers began to normalize. He didn't feel like a different person overnight, but he felt like his body was finally working with him instead of against him. And that's the key point. This wasn't a miracle intervention. It was the result of giving the body the right instructions, not magic, just the right signals. There's another layer to this that most people overlook because it doesn't show up as a number on a lab test right away. It shows up in how you feel, your strength, your endurance, your ability to recover. And at the center of that is something called the mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside your cells. These are essentially the power plants that keep your body running as you age. And more importantly, as your body receives the wrong signals, those mitochondria begin to lose efficiency. They produce less energy, generate more waste, and struggle to maintain performance under stress. That's when you start to notice it, not as a diagnosis, but as a subtle shift. You feel more tired than you should. workouts feel harder, recovery takes longer. And what's actually happening is that your cells are losing the ability to generate and manage energy effectively. Without proper repair signals, damaged mitochondria accumulate instead of being recycled through a process known as mitophagy. The system slows down, and with it, your resilience. This is where aging moves from something theoretical to something tangible. Not just something happening in your DNA, but something you can feel in your body every single day. And this is where aging becomes something you can actually experience. Now, here's where this goes even deeper beyond energy, beyond DNA protection, into how your genes are actually being used. Because one of the biggest misconceptions in health is the idea that your DNA is fixed, that you're simply living out a genetic script you can't change. But that's not how biology works. What matters just as much as your genes is how those genes are expressed. This is where epigenetics comes in. Think of your DNA like a vast library of instructions, and epigenetics as the system that decides which pages get read and which stay closed. A simpler way to see it is like a dimmer switch, not turning genes on or off completely, but adjusting how strongly they operate. And that switch is incredibly sensitive to your environment, the food you eat, the stress you carry, the quality of your sleep, your level of physical activity. All of these send signals that influence which genes become more active and which ones are dialed down. Some of those genes are protective, involved in repair, resilience, and longevity. Others are linked to inflammation, dysfunction, and accelerated aging. And your daily habits help determine which side gets amplified. This is why two people with similar genetics can age in completely different ways, because they're not just living with their DNA, they're constantly interacting with it. And once you understand that, everything shifts. You're not rewriting your biology. You're regulating it. You're not changing who you are. You're changing how your body operates. To understand how that dimmer switch actually works, we need to look at one of its core mechanisms, DNA methylation. Methylation is a biochemical process where small chemical groups called methyl groups attach to specific parts of your DNA. When these groups bind, they can reduce or silence the activity of certain genes. When they're absent, those genes can become more active. Think of it like placing a small clamp on a section of a conveyor belt when it's there. The flow slows down. When it's removed, the system runs more freely. Your body uses this mechanism constantly to regulate which instructions are carried out and which are held back. In a healthy system, methylation helps keep inflammatory or damaging pathways under control while allowing protective and repair processes to stay active. But when the balance is disrupted through chronic stress, poor nutrition, lack of recovery, that regulation becomes less precise. Harmful pathways can stay active longer than they should, while beneficial ones are dialed down. Over time, that imbalance contributes to the very patterns we associate with aging, increased inflammation, reduced repair, and declining cellular function. What's important to understand is that this isn't a rare or occasional event. It's happening continuously across millions of cells in response to the signals you send through your lifestyle. And the most striking part is this: it doesn't require conscious effort to begin. It's already in motion, and it's happening every day, whether you notice it or not. And this is where something surprisingly simple begins to have a measurable impact. Polyphenols. These are natural compounds found in foods like berries, green tea, dark leafy vegetables, and spices such as turmeric. They don't just provide nutrients, they act as signaling molecules that directly influence your cellular environment. When consumed regularly, polyphenols interact with pathways like AMPK and mechanisms like methylation, helping shift your body toward repair, balance, and resilience. Research has shown that diets rich in polyphenols can lead to measurable changes in biological aging markers. In controlled studies, individuals who increase their intake of polyphenol-rich foods experience reductions in epigenetic age, in some cases by over 1 year in as little as 8 weeks, and even greater improvements in certain individuals. That's not a dramatic overhaul of lifestyle. That's a targeted shift in daily signals. Mechanistically, polyphenols help reduce oxidative stress, lower inflammation, and support the proper regulation of gene expression. They help turn down pathways associated with damage while reinforcing those tied to repair and longevity. And what makes this so powerful is how accessible it is. You don't need extreme interventions. You don't need perfect conditions. You need consistency, because when these signals are repeated day after day, they begin to compound quietly, reshaping how your body functions at the cellular level. And that leads to a realization: most people underestimate the simplest inputs repeated consistently can create the most profound biological effects. So what does this actually look like in your daily life? Not a complete overhaul, not an extreme protocol. A reset built on a few consistent signals your body already understands. Start with timing. Allow a natural fasting window overnight. Something as simple as finishing your last meal a few hours before bed and delaying your first meal in the morning. That gap gives your cells the low energy signal needed to activate, repair, layer, and movement. You don't need intense training. A daily 20 to 30 minute walk done consistently is enough to stimulate metabolic activity and reinforce those same pathways. Pay attention to your inputs. Replace highly processed foods with whole polyphenol-rich options: berries, green tea, cruciferous vegetables, spices like turmeric. These don't just nourish your body, they instruct it. Adjust your morning routine. Drink your coffee without added sugars or syrups, ideally during that fasted window, so it supports rather than disrupts your biology. And don't overlook something as basic as light. 10 to 20 minutes of natural sunlight exposure can help regulate vitamin D and reinforce cellular stability. None of this is extreme. None of it requires perfection. But together, these signals begin to align. They tell your body when to store, when to burn, and when to repair. And over time, that alignment changes how your system functions. Because the goal isn't to do more, it's to do what works. The problem isn't effort, it's direction. If you step back and connect everything we've covered, a clear system begins to take shape. AMPK controls when your body shifts into repair, deciding whether energy is stored or used to restore and protect telomeres, safeguard the integrity of your DNA, determining how well your cells can maintain function over time. And epigenetics regulates how your genes are expressed, fine-tuning, which processes are amplified and which are suppressed. These are not isolated mechanisms. They are interconnected layers of the same system, all responding to the same inputs. The way you eat, move, sleep, and manage stress doesn't just affect one